Well, let's give it up for Alex, everybody.
Oh, thank you. And thank you.
Go ahead, grab a seat.
All right, I'll take this one.
I'll have another chair in a second.
I like these chairs. Yeah, like
Director
chair. Yeah,
That's
I
right.
never actually got to sit in a director chair.
Did you get a director's chair when you were shooting Ambulance?
No, I actually got in trouble for sitting in one without realizing it.
No one told you to sit there, dude.
No one told me I couldn't, but apparently that's just set etiquette you're supposed to know as a 21-year-old. So,
Did you just get like a cheap plastic folding chair?
actually, I got an Apple box, and funny story with the Apple box. If you've been on set, it's just a wooden box that's very multi-purpose, and of course, sit on a wooden box, your butt gets tired over time. So I found this really fancy $60 Apple box cushion that got custom made for my box, and people think it's the most ridiculous thing ever until you sit on it, and then your life changes. So that's what I have now is an Apple box. But maybe I should get a director's chair.
So you take your own orthopedic cushion to set, basically.
Absolutely, and every single time it's a conversation. It's great.
All right, very good. Well, so I guess let's start out with this, since everybody just saw what you did there with Ambulance. A lot of really crazy dynamic shots, and I know we'll get questions from the audience later, and so I'll just get this one out of the way because I know people will ask it. How many did you crash in the course of shooting?
So in actual production days, I did not crash a single drone. I think on multiple occasions, Michael Bay wanted to crash drones. The shot that you saw under the cop car twice there, that was at the end of the movie, and Michael was just kind of having fun. They had a couple more cars to wreck, and if you guys know Michael Bay, you watch any of his movies, you know he just likes to blow things up. And so he told me he wanted me to fly under a cop car, and the cop car was going to only be a couple of feet off the ground. I think the idea was that the drone was going to just explode when it went into the cop car. And of course, I was determined because, Michael's a very passionate director, as many of you might know. I was determined to prove him wrong that I could do it because I think up till that point, I did everything he asked me to do on that movie, whatever difficulty the shot was. So I successfully flew under the cop car, but what you actually don't see in that shot was there were two other cop cars situated behind that one, which I was not briefed about, by the way. And if you actually go watch the clip on my Instagram, you can see I dodged them by, it was just inches. It's from the drone racing background is the only reason I think I was able to dodge them. And if you know Michael too, he's yelling at people on set all the time, very energetic. And you just kind of say, yes, sir, and you deal with it. But that was the one time after I landed, I ripped off my goggles and I just started yelling at him, just screaming at him, like, you didn't tell me about the cop cars. You didn't tell me about any of that. He just walked off. He didn't even acknowledge it. And it was like a week later, I think, in the wrap out that he was like, that was pretty good, kid. You did a good job. Maybe I'll buy you a video game for all your hard work or something like that on Channel 1 for about 300 people to hear. So, that was my experience with that.
And that's obviously, that was your first film you worked on, right?
Yeah. The Ambulance was.
Yeah, so let's rewind a little bit and sort of tell everyone what your background is and how you got to that point where the first project you ever work on is a Michael Bay action movie.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it really all starts back to, so I was 21 on Ambulance. If you rewind about 11 years into my life, my parents who are here in the audience, my mom introduced me to aviation at a young age. I used to be scared of airplanes. I wouldn't even get on one. But I got exposed to aviation at a very young age, got my pilot's license well before I got my driver's license. And during that whole time, I was into remote control airplanes and, of course, these FPV, first-person view quadcopter drones. And I got into drone racing sometime in about 2016. Went out to, at the time, it was Northeast Dallas Speed Addicts, but now it's Dallas Drone Racing, which is still an active chapter. And so I got into drone racing back in 2016, won the national championship in 2017, DRL World Championship in 2019, and then COVID hits. And all of a sudden, I start getting these messages on Instagram from people saying, hey, are you interested in being a part of filmmaking with your drones? And, we want to not just fly GoPro cameras, we want to fly a professional cinema camera that we could actually bring onto a movie like this. So I said, sure. So during my time in COVID, I spent a lot of time traveling out to LA, working with a production company out there on building basically custom drones out to carry these cameras. And then sometime in December of 2020, I get a call from a friend of mine. His name's Davis DeLillo. And he calls me just freaking out. It's like 11 p.m. at night. I'm in bed, wakes me up, and he's like, dude, we're on a Michael Bay movie. You won't believe it. And I was just like, slow down, slow down, slow down. And basically, Michael's right-hand man, Michael Case, he was tasked to find the newest, coolest thing. And he came across a shot that we did a couple months earlier in LA, kind of heard some rumblings about it. And the rest is history. At 21 years old, I was on Ambulance, and definitely a big step up for a 21-year-old. Most people work their whole lives to get onto a set like that. So I was very blessed and grateful to be able to get onto something like that at a young age and bring the skill sets that I have and then learn as well on set, basically on the job, how to work on a movie, how to work with the director and a DP like that.
Yeah, and so you and I talked about this. Alex is actually also featured on one of our Dallas film podcast episodes. So if you want to listen to that episode, he talks about a lot of other things that we may or may not cover tonight. So for that particular film, and as you're doing cinema cameras, it's obviously very different from so a standard drone that say somebody else will fly. It either has an integrated camera in it, or on your FPV drones, a lot of times you guys are just putting GoPros on them, essentially.
Yep.
But something like this, obviously, it's a heavier camera, a different lens, like a whole completely different form factor for that.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about what you had to build out and how you had to build those out in order to put a camera on it. And since this is a filmmaking audience who's probably curious, what kind of cameras are we putting on it? What are the lenses that are going on it? All of the technical stuff everybody's going to want to know.
That's a great question. So yeah, with the GoPro, you can basically have a pretty small drone because, GoPro camera weighs maybe 150 grams. I'm going to speak a lot in grams just because anyone here who flies drones knows we speak in grams. Very, very light, very small. So you don't need a very big wheelbase or big drone in order to lift something very comfortably like that. You see those drones, they fly very fast and not erratic, but very precise. So you need a lot of thrust. And so when you're talking about carrying something like a Red Komodo, a Sony FX6, even bigger cameras, I just flew on a project recently, the Raptor from Red Digital, all these big, heavier cameras, we need basically 3 times the drone, but we also need it to be able to fly in a way that not only is maneuverable, but also that's an expensive camera and lens kit. So if something goes wrong, as long as it's minor, not pilot error, I can land the drone. So the drones that we fly, they weigh probably a couple pounds. They're not that expensive. The most expensive part on the drone itself is going to be the camera lens. With FPV, most of the time we fly a really wide angle lens because you get the most dynamic feel in the FPV feel. When you get really tight, it just doesn't look quite as good in most applications. So we fly anywhere from like a 9mm, which I know for you filmmakers is like 9mm. I never use that on set, but a 9 to like a 24mm size lens. Most of the shots there were on a 15mm lens, so kind of splitting the gap in the middle. And also when you're wider like that, it gives the DIT, whoever's doing post, the ability to stabilize the footage if there's some wind bobbles or just some lack of talent on my part, and able to basically, with that extra width, punch it in a little bit and be able to stabilize the clip. But I mean, I've flown up to a 50mm lens, super, super tight. I've flown anamorphic lenses as well. So pretty much we can fly whatever we want on a drone. I can build a platform to do it. We can even fly gimbals now on FPV drones and do some crazy stuff like that.
So how big? So you say a couple of pounds. So are we talking, like this big? Okay.
About that.
So that's the size. And these are all custom made. You're making these drones specifically for the cameras. And so you're having to figure out, okay, we're flying a Komodo versus an FX6. They have different weights, and so you need different amounts of thrust. You're having to do all of the extra. This is where math comes in handy in school. I was like, this will never come in handy, algebra and math and all that kind of stuff. Well, if you want to fly a drone with a camera, you have to figure all that out.
Yep. Otherwise, it's a lot of trial and error. I was not very good at math in high school because I didn't apply myself. My eyes were like so set on like aviation and whatnot. But thankfully, because of that, I had a lot of DIY experience. So for what I didn't have maybe in math skills, being able to figure out thrust to weight ratios, I just had through a lot of trial and error, which I wouldn't recommend to people because it can be very expensive very quickly, especially as a 17-year-old mowing lawns to pay for stuff. But yeah, I mean, definitely with every, what I try and do as well, one thing I've learned specifically on ambulance was that there needs to be not just like a universal platform that can carry what most cameras you would be requested to fly, like an FX6 or a Komodo or the top 2 at the moment. And by the way, the reason that is because drones have vibrations. And so you want a camera with a global shutter. That way you don't have the vibration problem feeding into your footage. So if a camera doesn't have a global shutter, it becomes a real problem for us to fly. So if that's, if you guys are wanting to hire me or someone else to fly a drone, depending on your camera platform, that's just something to consider. Otherwise, it needs to be like a perfectly built, tuned drone, which is very hard to do. But anyways, all that being said, I try and make sure that I design multiple different platforms and also come to set with multiple different types of drones. So not just FPV drones, gimbaled FPV drones, your traditional drones like the DJI Inspire 3 and other ones. Basically, every shot requires a different tool, and sometimes the FPV drone is not the right tool. The other day, a director was like, okay, I want you to follow the car, and then I want you to look straight down. And if you guys here fly FPV drones, you know that if you point the drone straight down, but it's going to go down into the ground. And so that was an instance where I was very thankful that I had an Inspire 3. And anyone, by the way, wanting to use an FPV drone, Scout days are amazing for us pilots because it allows us to make sure that we bring you the right tools. So when we show up on set, you're not just caught off guard. And hopefully things like this can educate you guys as well on the different types of platforms so you know what you need depending on your style of shot.
That's a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I mean, I see everybody taking notes. There's a lot of note taking going on. And obviously, we're recording all this, so later on, this will be another podcast episode. It'll go up on the YouTube channel, so you'll be able to send it to your friends and family. And Mom can watch it as many times as she wants. What sort of cameras did you fly on Ambulance?
So Ambulance was all the red Komodo. There were a couple times where they wanted us to fly GoPros because they wanted us to smash into stuff. And then about 1 minute before takeoff, Michael Bay would be like, don't get that, what off that drone. You're going to fly a real camera. He just wanted to see carnage though.
Yeah. What do you know? What was the main camera platform for the shoot?
Actually, it was the Red Komodo. So Michael has a good relationship with the guys over at Red, which that relationship then extended onward to me and some of the people I was working with as well. So basically, the deal was if we smashed a Komodo, Red Digital would fix it. I'm biased towards Red because of that, but I really think it's a great camera in general, especially on an FPV drone.
Yeah, no, and actually, in the Red Komodo, because of the global shutter, is something people are using a lot for virtual production too, because it's the same kind of thing. If you're shooting, with an LED wall, you want that global shutter that helps for that as well. So what sort of so you from Dallas, grew up in Dallas and everything, and honed all your skills here. Went to LA, but you seem to be back in Dallas a lot. Talk about your back and forth. What are your goals here moving forward? What are you working on?
Yeah, so I'm a Dallas native, so of course you can imagine. Getting into California was not because I just wanted to move to California. I promise you guys, I did not turn the other way. I make sure I have to be so careful sometimes with audiences. But all that to say, LA was, really just mainly because that's where most of the film work has been. But now a lot of productions are getting outside of LA because there's more incentives in places like Texas, Georgia, and other places to shoot. And so what I've been doing is trying to build some more FPV work and drone work with Dallas Film Commission and other places back here because I think a lot of people here anticipate a lot of work coming to Dallas. And not all that is going to be drone, but there's going to be a pretty significant amount of film work, probably even big productions and movies coming in the next couple of years. So I've been trying to establish my roots a little bit more back here, create a local option. I'll be moving back to Dallas as well in the end of February. So very excited to be back in the United States when that happens. And, it's exciting too. I'm co-founding a company called Lone Star Drone Co. And so we're hoping to offer those exact type of drone solutions that I'm already doing in LA, but from a small scale all the way up to a big scale as well here.
It's good because you went out to LA and you sort of built your network out there, right? So people know who you are out there. And so you don't necessarily have to live there.
Yep.
They just know how to reach you. And it's a couple-hour flight to get back to LA if you need to, so it makes it easy to come back home essentially.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure Mom's happy as well that you're coming back home too. So usually I would just keep asking more questions, but I think we're going to have a lot of questions from the audience tonight. So I want to just kind of hop into the audience because I'm sure there's a wide variety of questions that I haven't thought of that they may have. Right here.
Watching the footage, it kind of reminds me of watching a video game a little bit. And I noticed professional video game players, they have a shelf life that only it's very short. Have you experienced anything like that where it's like wear and tear and do you take approach of maybe mentoring some young people to take over some of your roles, or are you honing your skills to be kind of a crafty veteran?
At the ripe old age of 24.
24.
You're
Man, what a great question, by the way. Thank you. I would say that, let me start by saying my background in drone racing specifically. I know there's some people here in the audience from the drone racing scene. Drone racing is a young man's sport. And I think, though, the reason it's a young man's sport is not necessarily, what I believe at least, is not because it's all about the reflexes. To a degree, absolutely. I think if you generally look at the best drone pilots in the world, in racing specifically, you're going to see that they're really, really young. But I think the reason why they're really good is also because they have a lot of time. When I was not married, when I had nothing else to care about except for flying drones, I was one of the best in the world for a couple of years. And then I started to get interested in other things like getting married, playing pickleball, making money, things like that take just a couple hours out of your day. And then all of a sudden, you lose a little bit of that competitive edge. But what I would say as far as when it comes to filmmaking side of things, I think what has helped me a lot is that drone racing background, because in drone racing, you learn to fly through. If anyone, by the way, who's aspiring to be an FPV drone pilot in film, go start drone racing just on the side. You don't have to try and be the best at it. But what drone racing will teach you is to be consistent, but it'll also teach you to fly through all kinds of different obstacles precisely over and over again. And so that's something that for me, I still race in the drone racing league. And I'm still at the top of the drone racing league. There's been a couple of people who've, prevented me from being at the very top, and all credit to them. But I definitely don't feel like my drone skills have gotten any worse. In fact, I feel like they've continued to evolve. And I feel like as I'm getting, even though I'm only 24, I feel like as my maturity goes up, it allows me to make better decisions, and especially safer decisions when you're on a film set versus on a drone racing course. You don't care about safety. You're just caring about winning. But on a film set, there's a lot more to think about than just being a super talented pilot and able to fly any type of shot. You have to think about making sure the client's happy, making sure that you can communicate well with the director, the DP, as well as making sure that the operation is done safe, because there's a lot of times where I have to say no to shots, not because I don't believe I can do them, but because if something goes wrong, someone can get hurt, and instead offering a counter solution. And so I think that that's something that just takes time with maturity, and a 16-year-old probably won't be able to do that as well as someone who's older. But I guess the point I'm trying to say is, for what I might lose in just raw reflexes, I think I make up for in experience and kind of being a crafty veteran, as you might say.
That's actually a really great question.
Yeah,
See, I would have never thought of that one. Glad we threw it to the audience. Somebody else, I'm sure someone else, right here.
Have you run into any challenges using anamorphic lenses that were unexpected?
Ooh, good question. I've flown anamorphic lenses quite a bit in the last couple of years. I have to look up what brand of anamorphic lenses I flew. The biggest challenge is when I'm flying the drone, I'm not seeing what you guys are seeing in that reel. So we're flying off of, I call it a witness camera, but it's an FPV, first-person view camera that's a lot lower resolution, lower latency. The reason I fly off that is simple. If I fly off of a live feed from a Komodo, it's going to be too delayed for me to fly precise. So with an anamorphic lens, the hard part is matching up my camera angles to make sure my framing is good. So a lot of the times with anamorphic lenses, it takes me more than 1 or 2 tries to get a shot, because even though what I'm seeing is so wide, anamorphic lens, depending on what it is, it's as you understand, it's not about the field of view. It's just the way it's like stretched almost. So I think when it comes to the challenges of flying an anamorphic lens, it's just a challenge to make sure everything is framed up between my camera and the camera that we're shooting on really well. And it just, takes finesse, practice, a little bit of luck as well to make sure that we get the shot. But I love flying anamorphic lenses. There's not a whole lot of FPV drone shots you'll see with anamorphic lenses, and I love it when directors approach me and say, I want to fly an anamorphic lens because that's what we're shooting on. I absolutely love that challenge.
Yeah, that would actually be a really cool look, is 100-mile-per-hour anamorphic lens shot. So what have you flown anamorphic that we could take a look at if it's out there somewhere?
Yeah, there's something on my full reel, Captain Vanover on Instagram. And I think just even having that makes me just want to go rent an anamorphic lens, unless someone just wants to loan me one. But there's the risk of it crashing. But anyways, there's a shot I did, because I'll just go crazy with what I want to do with it. There's a shot on my Instagram. It was for a BMW commercial. The director's name was Johnny Mass. I did it about 2 years ago. You can find it on my Instagram. You'll see the shot because I'm like diving out of these artificial clouds, not real clouds. I did it all legally. Artificial clouds, and that was with a 24 anamorphic lens, something like that. It's really interesting to see. Obviously on Instagram, you can't capture it fully, but if you look up that spec on YouTube or Vimeo, and maybe I can find a way to get a link to it on our news site or whatnot, just to show you guys.
That's fun. Yeah, so you've got obviously a lot of stuff on your Instagram page, and then Dallas Film Commission, we had Alex shoot some stuff as well. Yep. So on our YouTube channel, we have some stuff that you shot downtown and just kind of around, and there's the train shot and everything. That's cool. That's a really cool one also. Good question. Another good question. Right here.
What would you say the most challenging part is getting into actually the filming side of the drone and being, good at, not just okay, but being good enough to get that level to where you're able to get on these type of projects? What would you say the biggest challenge is?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is getting, first off, your foot in the door, because I was very blessed that someone reached out to me because they saw that they were like, best drone pilot. I had just won the world championship, so it was very convenient timing in that sense. What I tell people, though, that has worked for other people I know, just to get their foot in the door, is go. You don't have to get on a movie or something like that. Go find your buddy who has a cool car. Like one of my friends, like they rented a Mustang for a day because it's a cool looking car, and they just went out, found a cool location at sunset, and he just flew around it, right? And then they posted those clips on their social media, and then wherever area they're in, they looked up production companies, directors, whoever they could find. If you just do the research, you can find a lot of people, and they just spammed them, just sending these clips to them. And most of the time, if you're an aspiring pilot, you're going to get no response. Or if you're lucky, you'll get is a response basically saying, I'll pay you either little to no money. And trust me, I did my fair share, and even I still do, as a matter of fact, a lot of lower paid or even free work if there's some result to come from it. All that to say, that's the way to get your foot in the door. And then to build that experience, I think the best thing you can do is know your limits as a pilot, but try to push those limits. So try not to push them on the day of shooting, because the last thing a client wants is to waste their time, whether it's because you crashed on set or you just didn't even get the shot, right? So again, I reference the drone racing a lot because I think that drone racing teaches you how to be consistent, but it teaches you how to fly precise. And I think some of the best FPV pilots in the film industry right now are former drone racers. You'll see other guys who are very big in film in FPV, but you won't ever see them doing those big profile jobs or even those crazy shots like flying under a cop car or something like that, because at the end of the day, even though they have a good film eye, they don't have that last 5-10% in order to go do something crazy like that. So I think, again, if people want to get into this, the best thing to do is just you don't make excuses. Go film your own content. Go make reels. You don't even need an object to film. You can just go film some scenic stuff. Do it all legally, of course. Upload those clips. That gets you practice as well. And then send those clips to people that you might know or be able to research, and then get your foot in the door. You're not going to start most likely on an ambulance or a big movie like that. And even I didn't. I did a lot of car commercials before I got an ambulance, and just use those jobs to build experience. And if you do a good job, you're going to continue to get referred to by bigger and bigger people.
Yeah, that's what, I mean, you answered it all, but basically differentiating yourself somehow from, there's a lot of drone pilots out there, right? And most of them aren't flying the FPV. And so it just provides such a different and unique look that if you can create your own footage that you can somehow get a lot of people to watch online or whatever else, it's a way to, gain a little attention essentially.
Yep, absolutely.
Is there a shot in your head that you're just waiting for someone to ask you to make?
Kind of. I think it's more the location that I want to do. Like Yosemite or I think Yosemite is the top up. It's very, very illegal to fly there. I have tried. I posed.
You said very, very illegal.
Illegal.
Oh,
illegal. Yeah. Do not go fly Yosemite.
Because it's a national park.
It is a national park, and not just any national park. It is Yosemite. I've even tried to pose like a project of mine that was just some fake name just to like get a film permit. And I tried for 6 months and got shut down. But I think that'd be like a cool, I think for me, a lot of FPV drone shots, they kind of look similar. You're filming a different object, but ultimately the shot itself is kind of similar. So what interests me and excites me the most is trying to experiment with different platforms now. So what I would love to see from a production or whoever, maybe it's something that I do on my own as well, or with Dallas Film Commission, is just trying to create new angles that you can't get with anything else. So I really loved experimenting with a gimbal on an FPV drone. The difference between that and a traditional drone is a traditional drone can't fly through tight gaps. It can't fly fast. But if you have a gimbal, you can solve some of those problems that you have with an FPV drone where the camera's fixed to the drone. So wherever angle the drone is, the camera's going. So it'd be cool to do some leading shots at really high speeds, like 80, 90 miles an hour on a car. Being able to, it'd be hard to describe all of them from my mind, but I think that's the next step for me, unless I can get a cool location, would be to just try and experiment more with the lenses, with the gimbal. And because no one's really doing that right now, because I think everyone's almost like content and super happy with these shots because it's the new thing. But I've always tried to think beyond what's current and like what's going to be the future. And I think that being able to offer that tool to a production is going to be incredibly valuable to them.
So following up on that, you mentioned you can't fly in a national park.
Yep.
How much do regulations and rules and laws play?
The FAA.
Yeah, it plays a lot, definitely. And especially, of course, I do everything by the book, but being a higher profile drone pilot, I have all the eyes on me. So it's not just about me playing by the rules, it's setting an example for other people, I think. But in terms of the regulations and whatnot, I think if You want to be a drone pilot, you have to get and make money off of it. You have to get what's called a Part 107, which is a commercial pilot's license essentially for drones. And what's neat about that is almost all the material that it is required to get a private pilot's license from the ground school perspective, plus a couple of drone regulation style questions. And I think just doing that gives you all the information you need to know and the tools to be able to either be safe ultimately, but also to understand how to get the waivers, the permits, whatever it might be, in order to conduct a safe operation. And I think at the end of the day, when there's not a clear rule on something, it's pilot judgment. And I always try and encourage people to prioritize safety as their number one thing, because what we don't want is this whole industry to be ruined because someone didn't think through something and something that was out of their control happened. An example I've had before is I lost in downtown LA, there's a lot of 2.4 gigahertz, right? And that's pretty much the same frequency that we're flying on. And I lost video behind a bridge, which we had line of sight of, but it wasn't great line of sight. And thankfully we had done a risk assessment. I was able to basically like crash land the drone because I knew there were no people there. There wasn't an active road. But if that had been an active road and I had not used some discernment there, that could have ended very badly. So I think the point is that I would like to make and encourage people who are doing this is safety should always be the number one thing. And then if you get your Part 107, the rest is going to come with that, understanding how to, adhere to the regulations and whatnot.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of it is common sense, right? You would think it'd be common sense. Don't fly over people. Don't fly over active roads. Whatever situation could cause something to go badly. That's why you have to be within line of sight. You have to have spotters. You have to have all these other things to make sure that people aren't just. And I guarantee people all day, every day are ignoring all of the rules. Is what it is. But I know I'll talk about from a permitting perspective, the way that it works is if you are launching or landing from public property, you have to get a permit from the city of Dallas. If you're launching or landing from private property, you just need essentially permission of the property owner. And once the drone is in the air, it's under the jurisdiction of the FAA. It's not under any other, municipality or legal jurisdiction. If it's an inch off the ground, it's the FAA's regulations that you're following. But the only thing municipality, if I can say that, municipalities are telling you is where you can launch and land from, basically.
And I'll just want to add to that and say that thankfully in Dallas, it's from an airspace perspective with the FAA, it's actually they're pretty good about giving waivers out, which is awesome. Generally, if you're in an area like downtown Dallas, you're not going to get a giant waiver because there's Dallas Love Field and there's 737s flying right over downtown. But generally speaking, most areas in DFW, I'm able to fly my drone as long as I have at least a couple days notice in order to get the waiver. A lot of the times you try and tell the FAA, hey, I want to do this afternoon. It's not going to happen. But if you have some planning, it's very easy to get waivers. And there's even apps on your phone that you can use to do that. So it's really easy. And then Tony hit on it. The permits, I think, are actually the bigger challenge, especially in a place like a city.
Yeah, that's always the thing is a city, doesn't want to give you necessarily permission sometimes because everybody's like, what? And if they do, they want your pilot's license, they want the insurance, all that other kind of stuff. But there are apps where you can buy insurance for an hour to fly a drone, so that's not. And in Florida, what I used to tell people when I was film commissioner there, they would want to fly over beaches or near some of the county parks you weren't allowed to fly in. But if you launch off a boat from the water, we have no jurisdiction to give you or deny you a permit there. So if you're launching from a boat in the water, you can then do what you want to do with it as well. So that's just a little.
I can't say I've never done that. But, it's a good idea, Tony. I'll remember that.
It's a little workaround for that permitting thing. But there's not a lot of water necessarily around Dallas, so not anything you need to worry about here.
So you mentioned risk assessment.
Yeah.
So is it kind of your common protocol to do like a site survey, maybe even a dry run on different projects? I don't know if it's a smaller project, you don't do a site survey. Kind of give me kind of your protocol.
Yeah, anything that's outdoors, whether it's a small project or a movie, especially on a movie, but there's at least I try and get one scout day. Even if it's not a paid thing, I'll just go out there myself if it's local to me. And what I want to do is I just want to make sure that I can conduct a safe operation. So if they want me, what I try and do, I'll give an example. I filmed a restaurant a year ago. They want to do a one-shot fly-through, but they wanted me to come over the road. Well, the problem is you can't fly a drone over an active road. The FAA rule on that is actually a little bit gray because what defines an active road. But at the end of the day, what I have seen from other people's experiences, don't leave it up to interpretation in the FAA's courtroom because they will not be your friends. So in that instance, doing the scout day, I was able to discuss with them, okay, if we're going to fly over the road, we need to be able to lock off the road. And so we ended up being able to do that. But again, if I had shown up on the day of, that would have been, I would have had to tell them no, essentially, because we couldn't get the resources that quickly together to be able to do a road lock off. So yeah, I mean, the only way you can be really safe is with planning, with anything, instead of just pulling out your drone from your backpack or whatever and just flying it.
All the same basic rules that you apply to any normal production are going to apply to the drone production as in regard to scouting and pre-production, all the things that you need to do to get ready to shoot, basically. So talk a lot of when you're flying an FPV drone, part of the charm of the whole thing is it's fast, right? And you get different and unique angles. So it seems it's obviously tailor-made for anything vehicle related, cars, motorcycles, all that kind of stuff. People want to shoot that. And you talked about wanting to do a restaurant fly over or fly through, which is a little strange. I don't know what they're serving at this restaurant, but
everything, Tony.
But what else, in your opinion, can you shoot with something moving this fast? It's not a vehicle. It's not a but that makes it interesting, because if it's you're not going to film two people talking with an FPV phone spinning around him at 100 miles an hour kind of thing. Like in your opinion, or what shots have you done? I just sort of related to an earlier question.
Yeah.
Can you use the FPV drone for besides those really dynamic action sequences? Because not everybody's shooting an action scene.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think one that immediately comes to my mind was right after I did Ambulance, I got on this movie called Emancipation with Will Smith. And what's interesting is the movie was filmed in black and white. And just by that, you can tell it's not like every other movie. So Ambulance was all high energy scenes, just like you were talking about. I show up on Emancipation, and Bob Richardson, the DP, very famous DP, did a lot of big movies. He sees me do one FPV shot, and it was already pretty tame. Like, remember, it's Michael even said this: you're stretching everything out on a big screen, right? So whatever motion you're doing is going to feel 3 times as jarring on a big screen. So you have to be smooth. And in that case, he didn't want any of the banking, none of this, right? So I do a shot flying through this like Emancipation style camp, right? And it's got just a little bit of just this kind of like Superman style, and everyone else is kind of like, "Whoa, that was sick!" And Bob Richardson comes over to me. And he goes, everyone else out here is, they're saying it's cool, but I'll tell you when the shot is good, right? And the biggest thing he wanted, he's like, I don't want the camera doing this. I want the reason I want the drone is because you can put it in places I can't put a camera. He's like, if I had it my way, I'd have 500 people cut down all these trees. We'd roll out the tracks, and I'd do it on a dolly first try. But when I can't do that, that's where you're here for. So again, as a 21-year-old, you just came off of Ambulance. Pride is through the roof because everyone's been telling you how good you are. And then to be told on the first shot of the day, I'll tell you when it's good, was a big, a good humbling moment. But I think the takeaway from all that is we ended up just doing the drone shots with the normal FPV drone in a very slow manner. And we're able to maneuver it in these tight spaces that you couldn't before. And I think one thing to add to that as well is that we have different styles of drones, but when it comes to the FPV drones, you can have what's called a ducted drone or a guarded drone. So essentially on movies where you're flying around people, not race cars and all that, you have guards around the propellers. And so essentially, if it's not, the plan is not to hit anyone, but if it is to contact someone, it's not going to hurt them. It should just bounce off of them, even if it's a big 10-pound drone. And so on Emancipation, we designed custom guards to go around the propellers. So we were able to fly around town. The only downside to doing that is it reduces a little bit of flight time and performance. But when you're going really slow like this, it's not a problem. So to kind of go back to your question, there's a lot of different platforms for it. I think, the question I like to pose to people is like, what can you not do with an FPV drone? Because we can always, unless it's filming something like you and me talking up here, there's so many use cases. It just depends on what type of FPV platform. And most people think of FPV like Ambulance, but there's so many different forms.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point, because when you think about, one, the time and the manpower to lay dolly track, and then run these like long dolly shots and everything, or you can just fly a drone through. It depends if you're recording, dialogue or anything when you're doing that. Won't necessarily be able to do that, but can actually save you a lot of time on a shoot for those kind of tracks or those kind of shots where you normally have either like a techno crane or a dolly.
So I have a question about weight. So is it easier to operate the drone when you have a smaller camera body on it? Or is it okay? So it is. The reason why I ask is because there's obviously the FX6, which has global shutter with it, but in May get the shutter. So
Very excited about that.
yeah, yeah, very excited, yeah.
Very excited because for me, it's not just weight, it's also form factor. Because if you have a camera that's like a really, like the Komodo is nice because it's like a cube. And it's on top of it being a durable camera, the form factor is a little bit more aerodynamic. Believe it or not, aerodynamics do really matter on these FPV drones because you have like a really wide body camera. Even if it's lightweight, it feels like you're flying with like a sail in the air, like kind of like like a spoiler, like slowing down your drone, making it not fly as good. So yeah, I mean, that's generally I like to fly narrow body cameras if possible. It can be long, and as far as the weight is concerned, weight has a huge impact on performance. Like the heavier cameras, you need more power to lift that. And so with bigger drones, generally speaking, you get less maneuverability. But I think for everything I've been doing, I'd say 99% of the stuff I've done the last couple of years, from things like music videos to fly-throughs to movies, whatever it is, I'm never wishing I had more maneuverable drone. About the only time I am is when I'm like chasing something on Gran Turismo where I'm trying to go 90 miles an hour. And then those extra couple 100 grams, I really start to feel it because that's where the drone's literally on its edge.
Right here.
How do you handle focusing?
Great question. So usually on the drones that we fly, we set it to infinity on the lens. Sometimes we get a specific request to set it specifically beforehand. That's one of the solutions we're trying to figure out right now. So on some of the bigger FPV drones that I fly, on some of the recent projects I've done, they're big enough to where we're actually able to have someone operating the focus remotely, which is a really exciting thing on an FPV drone. But generally, those shots are not your typical, like we've been showing.
I was going to say, who's pulling focus on 100 mile an hour?
It's usually slow cruising stuff.
Yeah.
And I think usually setting the lens to infinity for the fast FPV stuff seems to work really well. But if we can find a solution, find an operator who's got the reflexes like I do and can pull focus like that, then that's amazing.
Well, and those types of shot that you want too, you're not looking for like, a great depth of field and, for the entire background to be blurred out or anything like that. You want to see everything. Otherwise, what's the point in flying that
FPV
shot?
drone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good question.
And then, what would you say your most challenging shot you've ever done filming is? The one that's just like that one thing you think about, like, I would not want to do that one.
Oh man, that's a good question. I'm never challenged. No, I'm kidding. I'm very much kidding. Very much kidding. Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry. Now no one's going to want to work with me. No, I get challenged consistently because especially every person I work with has a different need. Sometimes the challenge isn't actually the difficulty of the shot in terms of the flying ability. It's trying to make sure that the framing and everything is perfect. So I would say I'll give two different examples. One from a technical flying perspective and then one that was just a hard shot, and I'll explain why. The hardest one that I look back and it was exciting, but I don't wish to do it again. I didn't show it on the reel, but it's a shot from 2020 where I dove into, if you've seen LA, there's like a hole underground. It's called Lower Grand. And the entrance to get under there is probably about 10 feet wide, but you think 10 feet wide for a drone this big, that's not bad. But when you're coming into it from a building dive at night at 90 miles an hour, it looks very small. And you know the consequences of if you just make one slight error at the last second. And that shot then led to a motorcycle chase. If you guys want to see this shot, please pull up my Instagram, Captain Vanover. You can go. I think it's highlighted at the top of my profile because it's probably my favorite shot ever.
It's like trying to put a proton torpedo down an exhaust port.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good analogy. That one was just, I think there was just so much risk involved with that for me. There's shots I do where there's like no risk and the flying is really technical and hard, but because there's no risk, it just comes naturally to me, right? It's the ones where there's a lot of risk or a lot of demand that's when it gets really challenging. I think the other example would have been on that movie with Bob Richardson because the flying itself actually got really difficult. If you guys fly an FPV drone, I like to compare it to a Formula One car. It's meant to be driven on the edge. So imagine driving a Formula One car around in like second gear through downtown Dallas in traffic. Like it's trying to be really smooth and steady. It's very, very difficult. And so that's another instance. I love to work with Bob Richardson if he's watching this again. But an instance where now I'm glad I have different platforms for that, like I didn't have a couple of years ago, because being able to take an FPV drone with a fixed camera and try and keep it as perfectly still, but they also want to be turning like this. And anyone who flies here knows you turn, you bank. So trying to like minimize that and keep it real smooth because you know it's going to be blown up on a big screen. that was, I'm even just getting exhausted thinking about it because there's really not, it's not something you train for as an FPV pilot. You train to fly very precise, kind of fast and agile. So to do that was like going against everything that I learned. And thankfully, I think my experience with drone racing, but also with like real full scale aviation and having to keep an airplane really smooth was able to like actually translate very well to that.
Great. Right here.
Do you remember the first time you put FPV goggles on? Did you have any kind of motion sickness or anything like that? Because I've heard, I haven't done it, but a friend of mine did. He said, well, the first time you put it on, hold on something or sit down and do it from there.
Yeah, I'm not proud to admit it, but I think I got almost to the point of puking like 10 times when I started back at FPV back in 2013 or 14. I was really excited because it was like a Christmas gift, and I was like, I just saw these guys look so cool with these first-person view goggles on, and I just was like, maybe this isn't for me, because I think now it's a little bit easier because now we're flying in high definition or have the ability to. Because one of the most disorienting things initially was the fact that the signal is not very good with the drones, and then you're kind of like locked into this box. What I always just tell people is like sit down the first time, and feel free to take the goggles off if you get motion sick. But generally, I would say for people watching through the FPV goggles, prepare the first, some people, they just get it right away. But I'd say the first 10 times, prepare to feel a little motion sick afterwards. Just don't, force yourself to continue. Just like take a break and then come back to it.
Yeah, it's the same thing people get with just any of like the goggles for video
VR.
games or anything else. People are do it about 15 minutes and you're done.
There's
More
one right down
questions?
here actually.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
With the shot on emancipation that you were talking about, why was that done with an FPV as opposed to like a Mavic Cine or something? Or would you choose that now as opposed to
If the camera was good enough on the Inspire, which now I'd say with the Inspire 3, with 8K, it's good enough. But I think the problem with that shot, even with an Inspire 3, is the drone is just, there was a doorway we had to fly through that was not even as wide as like these stairs were. You just can't fit an Inspire 3 through there, even if you're the best pilot. It just physically can't do it. And the problem with that I think we'll run into for a while with just the camera size and the drone size needed to lift a cinema camera is there's a lot of shots where they want me to fly through like a window or something like that. And I would love to fly a gimbal drone through that because I think it would make the client and the director more happy, but it's just, we don't have a drone small enough to be able to carry that weight yet. So that's something it's an area where I'd love to, as I'm already working on, continue to innovate and make that possible. But it's also a little bit on like the camera companies to make the cameras smaller and those kinds of things. So going back to like that shot, like I would love to have done that with something more stable, but even now there's not a whole lot of drones that I could think of that would be better suited for that. It really, in that case, comes down to pilotability.
Any questions? I keep ignoring this side of the room because I'm tilted this way. So right here.
So is it going to cost more for your client if you're going to use gimbal on your...
Great question. It depends. I think generally speaking, it costs a little bit more because with a gimbal, you have to have a second person there. So you have to think about that cost. Generally, the drone isn't much more. The way that a lot of FPV pilots like myself work is we just have a fixed day rate and then we bill out the gear that the client wants. So if they want a Komodo on an FPV drone that doesn't need a gimbal, then it bills out for that. But I would say for people interested in using gimbal, just think about you're paying for an extra person to be there to operate the gimbal. And people will ask me, like, can I just operate it myself? And what I tell people is you can, but you have to understand this isn't like normal crane operating or camera operating because the drone's moving fast. And it's about the most important thing is the communication. And that's something that comes with practice. And so like I've never had an instance really except for one person who wanted to operate the gimbal who's really good.
So do you have a partner that you can practice with him all the time and go to project, or you just choose any random partner?
Definitely don't like choosing random people. I like working with the same people, and I think consistency is key always. So yeah, there's a select group of people that I've actually trained on a lot of days, like out in the field. This person who worked with me on it was a movie that I can't now talk about. I almost spilled it out. It's not out yet. He had never operated a gimbal on a drone before, but he had some previous experience with obviously like camera ACing on set and whatnot. And so we spent, I think it was like 4 or 5 days out in LA, just at the park every day, just getting him up to speed. And honestly, by a day into it, he was good enough to probably go on set. But after 5 days, we were like a well-tuned oil machine. So anyone can learn it. Just learning it on set's not the case. But yeah, it's definitely, I love training people in that as well, because the people who don't come in with like a certain like set of expectations or whatnot, they actually learn better because they don't have this like theory of like how it has to work. They just do what you say, and then they realize like that's a good way of doing it, and then they also kind of form their own way of doing it as well. Great.
Sorry, one more.
Go for it.
One more, okay.
So I know you need like 3 months upfront, like to get the permit if you need to shoot like during the night.
Not necessarily. Not for now. With the FAA's changed their rules and regulations a little bit with night stuff. Generally speaking, it's not 3 months. I don't even know if previously it was 3 months with FPV because I've done stuff faster. The biggest thing, the night isn't too much of a problem actually with drones. The hardest things to permit are when you need to take off on a city location, or the hardest one I've dealt with, the two, flying over an active road and then flying around people. I always just tell people, by the way, I will not fly over people. It is not a permitting issue. It's not a lack of faith in my ability issue. It's a FAA issue. And so there are very few circumstances where you're allowed to fly a drone over a crowd of people. And basically they all need to be stunt people, officially speaking. So people do it, and that's their own prerogative, but it is a rule. So I like to tell people that we can cheat it though. Like on Gran Turismo, there was a scene we flew like over the crowd, but the drone itself was actually not over the crowd. It was probably like 20 feet back, and we were on a gimbal that was pointed like 80 degrees down. So that was an instance where the director wanted us to fly over people. We said we couldn't do it, but here's an alternative, and they were happy with it.
Yeah, as long as you can provide a solution to get them the look that they want without, breaking any rules and killing anybody. That's always good.
Or just VFX them in there.
That's right. That's right. Let's see if there's any questions over here first.
Oh,
Anyone over here? Forward, flip back this way. No? Good? Okay.
What's the best app for permits?
Skywatch is a good one. That's, I think, the one I use. Open Skies, and they're all like called something Sky. Just like I would go on the App Store. They all use the same database with the FAA. So they're all not very user-friendly, which is just weird to me. But yeah, I would say Open Sky, Skywatch are the two that come to my mind that I just flip back and forth, whatever one comes up on my phone first.
Right here?
Was your experience on Gran Turismo the same or similar experience to filming on Ambulance?
Yeah, I would say absolutely not. Neil, the director, was very different personality from Michael Bay. Very quiet, very hard to get a reaction out of. And also on Gran Turismo, we weren't main unit most of the time because they're filming on a track. So they would just send us out with like a list of shots. We'd park ourselves over the course of the day on like 3 different spots of the track. And anytime the cars came around, it's like, all right, we got to get up. So we weren't like, most of the time we weren't there with even an AD or a DP or director or anyone. We were just kind of on our own, which to some degree I really like that because it just kind of gives me the freedom. Like once we nail the shots that we need, I'm like, my mindset is like, okay, let's nail these quickly. So like I have like all these in my mind because I'm thinking like I want to use these on my reel. Selfishly, like the one actually, if you look at Gran Turismo, I flew under like the Red Bull Ring. I like flew under the bull. Like that was that was kind of my idea, and they used it in the movie. So I like it from that sense. It gives me more time, but it's also nice when you have a director who understands the FPV drone and learns, like Michael Bay and Neil and some of these other guys, because they know what it can and can't do, and they can kind of direct you with that. And it's cool to have that direction as well.
Great. Right here?
Do you bundle your drone insurance with your home and auto?
Yeah, call VannyStyle.com. Or Geico. No, I don't. But drone insurance is actually pretty affordable.
Yeah.
You can get $1 million policy for a couple $100 a month. That's pretty good. I would not recommend using it for your gear unless you like lose your gear, because the moment, as I may or may not have learned, the moment you destroy a camera and you try and file an insurance claim, your quote's going to go up about 200%. So I always just insure mainly for a liability standpoint when I'm flying on productions, and anything where I'm required to get a permit is going to want to have insurance. And I think for everyone who's out there doing FPV work, you got to have insurance. A lot of people will use AMA who are like come from the FPV like in RC world, that's not good enough for what we're doing here. You need to get your own insurance policy. And you can, like Tony said, you can even with a lot of these companies, they'll give it to you for a day for like $40, right? I do it because I do it for on a yearly basis because I do enough work. But it's very affordable and very worth it.
Yeah, there's a website called thimble.com, and you can literally go on there and not only get insurance for a day or a week or 5 days or whatever for drones, but anything else too. You can get production insurance. So yeah, so if you literally just want production insurance for a day or 2 days because you're doing a short film or a commercial or something like that, you can get production insurance on there. They're a company that offers like all these insurance products for all kinds of different jobs and resources all in one place. But it started as a drone insurance company, and then they expanded into all these other insurance things. So a little insurance information today as well. Right here.
Good to see you, Alex.
Good to see you, TJ.
You mentioned that you won't fly over people. Well, there's a lot of sub 250 drones out there.
Yep.
Is it because they can't carry a good enough camera or something else?
Personally for me, so Jay brings up a good point. If your drone is under 250 grams, so it's about the size of your palm, with a stripped down GoPro camera, you can get permission to fly over people. And if you see like live concerts nowadays is where I see a lot of FPV drones being flown, you can do it. And the reality is if a 250 gram drone going at 20 miles an hour hits you in the face, it's probably not going to do any damage to you. You're probably going to feel like someone like hit you in the back of the head like that. For me, I don't want to, a lot of the time it's because I can't fly a camera. Like a GoPro is, I haven't done a medium or big size job with the GoPro in 4 years because the Komodo is like the GoPro in the film world, to be honest. Like most of the time now, I'm not even flying Komodo. It's either FX6 or Komodo X or something a little bit better. The Komodo for these people is like disposable. But also I don't want to be the pilot that the drone has a fail-safe that's out of my control and it goes into a crowd, especially like that, where there's gonna be hundreds of people with their cell phones out. And there's, of course, like you're gonna be exposed in that. So for me, my case is a personal risk assessment management, and I've declined a lot of those jobs. They look fun, but it's not where you couldn't actually really offer me $1 to make it worth it, I don't think. Just don't want to have something go wrong. And it does go wrong, just thankfully hasn't gone wrong on a big concert yet.
Have you done any action sports type stuff yet? I would think like snowboarding, skiing, like all that kind of stuff would be really cool with an FPV.
I did some stuff with the USA Olympic snowboarding team.
Cool.
That's going to come out, I think, probably this spring sometime. Really, really exciting stuff. As far as other live motorsport, one of the ways I actually got into, before I started doing movies, was filming off-road racing up in like Wisconsin and Minnesota. I got that by just emailing some videos of me like chasing cars on, to these people and ended up getting work and kind of doing some stuff. But so I've done a lot of live action stuff. I think my dream would be to like film Formula One, although I've actually been approached by Formula One about that. It's never going to happen because the risk of a drone going down on the track is just, it's too great. But I think definitely there's a lot of motorsports now you'll see where there's FPV drones flying around, and that's a perfect use case for an FPV drone. Yeah.
I'm going on a snowboarding trip at the end of February.
Really?
It'd be really cool if someone could.
Hey, you have my number.
I'm not moving that fast, though. Is a problem.
So, are you setting the frame rates, or are you meeting with the DP what your frame rate is while you're flying like that? And are you in charge of the camera, or do they provide you with an AC to set up the camera for the drone?
Good question. Usually 24 frames, although sometimes we'll shoot in 40. I think it's what the Komodo does. It doesn't do 48, but it's always whatever. Most of the time it's that. I always ask, like when I get on set, or if I haven't had a scout or whatnot, like we'll usually learn then what they want to shoot in. I like to actually go out to and fly the drone with the camera settings, especially if there's like a LUT, just to make sure it looks good. And I'll send the client like, hey, we're just out here like prepping. This is, by the way, what it looks like, just in case they want to make any changes. I always request an AC. I do not always get an AC. So the people that I work with are all capable ACs if they weren't working for me. That's like a qualification, I guess, to be a drone tech for me, is that you know how to work a camera in that sense, because I don't always get it. I'll bill it, but because I'm already building a tech. But someone who can do that, because as a drone pilot, what you have to focus on is making sure you can deliver the shot. And so I can't be like in between, shots, like focusing on like playback on the camera and switching out memory cards and whatnot in order for a scale drone operation to work well.
So it's interesting. You started out obviously in the drone world and the flying and the piloting world, but you actually have a very good technical level now when it comes to cameras and filming. What was that kind of learning curve or transition like? Of like, oh, I need to know more than just how to fly this thing now. Now I literally need to know about frame rates and everything else, and all the things that go into shooting on a proper cinema camera as opposed to a GoPro.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because for a while I would just with GoPros, I would just look up some other pilots and like just copy the settings. I did not know how to expose a camera properly. It's actually hard for me to watch some of my early stuff, but I think on a funny note on that, and I'll get more practical. When I was on Ambulance, I was a prep day, and Michael comes out to watch us fly. He's like, "Oh, we're going to meet Michael Bay. And we're in downtown LA. We have the roads blocked off, but it's still flying, big buildings and whatnot." And he goes, "All right, kid, I'm going to teach you about cinema and composition right now. Okay, you take that drone, go up to the top of that building." You guys who fly FPV, like even if it's all legal, it's scary to do that, especially when it's your own money into this drone, and you're like, "Oh, please don't like fail safe or whatnot." And that was like a funny, he was like, "Okay, you see how like the sun's going there, you're going to get this flare on the lens, and like that's composition right there, kid. That's backlight. Okay, now turn the drone, that's front light. Like I want you to fly. No, that side of the building. No, that side." But in all seriousness, beyond just, I think, getting experience, like when I got onto Ambulance, for example, the people I was surrounded with were people who've worked on movies before just with cameras. So they were able to help me cheat the system in a way and just like do that for me. But I asked a lot of questions along the way because I wanted to see what they were doing and trying to understand why they were doing the thing. It's mainly with exposure is the big one. And then I took like a 3-month online film course that year because that same company I was working with was like, "Hey, we have a nice gift for you. It's a 3-month online course." I'm like, "Oh, gee, thanks." I'm like, "I don't have time for this," but I did it, and it was very good because it just talked a lot about composition and framing, composure, lighting, and just everything that you would kind of need to know. Because that's stuff that as an FPV pilot you don't ever think about. I think that's what differentiates guys who are not just great pilots, but a great package for like a film set, because they also understand those things, and so they're not just being told what to do, but they can also be creative and understand what looks good and what doesn't look good. And I'm still learning.
Yeah, and well, it's interesting because a lot of people start out as filmmakers and they understand that, and then they fly drones because they need them for their productions. And you went the reverse, where you started out as a pilot and then are essentially becoming a filmmaker as well.
Yeah, it's funny. The person who reached out to me, Davis DeLillo is his name. He knows how to fly drones. He started learning to fly because he works in film, and he's like, "I see a need for this, and I'm just going to learn to fly it for my company." And he spent 3 years learning to fly. And by the way, he's a good pilot. Like I've been around him, but he understands the skill difference, not just to be able to do a shot, but to be able to do it consistently and safely. That's why a lot of these big productions will hire pilots with like a drone racing background, because even if maybe they don't frame the shot up perfectly, they're not worried about them crashing the drone or not being able to at least try and get the shot. It's interesting seeing. There's some people though who they basically just dedicate themselves to their craft, and people who come from only film and then learn FPV and are very, very good at it. Of course, I think that there's still like that little bit of a percent that's like, oh, it's going to take them just years and hours and hours. I think my mom and I were figuring it out, like 15,000 hours flying FPV, which is, I think, a safe estimate. So like that's a lot of time that you can't just get, even if you're just doing it every single day.
Where there's the whole 10,000 hour rule, like it takes 10,000 hours to be whoever made that up, I can't remember, but it seems accurate. Basically.
Yeah, I think
it's like 40 hours a week for 5 years, basically.
Yep.
Is what it kind of boils down to.
Yeah.
More questions?
You said that you lost your radio signal earlier. Could you foretell about why you lost it, or before you did that shot and you lost the video? Is there a way to find that if there's a big electric tower there that might affect my signal? I mean, that's probably the culprit, is a big tower of electricity, right?
Generally, yes, and that's why I love Scout. That's another thing we do on a Scout day, is we bring an RF Explorer. It's just like a wand, basically, and you just look at the frequencies. But in that case, we, even before the flight, were monitoring 2.4 and 5.8. There's obviously noise in a city like that, but there were never we basically put ourselves on a channel that was the cleanest out of all of them. And it's just I mean, the thing too with these HD FPV systems, FPV and first-person view, is on high-definition FPV, the way the signal is transmitted is a little bit different than on analog. Like analog is, I think, the best the worst looking image, but it's almost like the most consistent, because if you lose video, it's not trying to reconnect. It just comes back the moment you get signal. So like, you know, I was racing drones, I would like fly behind something and I go blind for a second, but I knew it would come back. Whereas digital, it has to like almost relock in that signal. So the signal actually came back on the drone, but it took like 10, 15 seconds. So there was something, to answer your question now, like nowadays I'm able to prep for that a lot better. I haven't had a situation in recent history where I've just had signal go out on a drone like that. So that's part of the learning process. But every now and then I do get caught a little bit off guard. The best way is just do scouts, try and put yourself on a channel that's far away from everything. And I think one other thing that's cool is DJI has basically come out with an auto channel feature on the drones that'll just switch the channels automatically. And that's super. I've actually witnessed it changing on a film set because someone powers up a Teradek and they're just blasting 5.8 and they put it on the same. And by the way, we had this conversation in a safety meeting. Like, if you have a Teradek, please like let us know and do not just power it on while we're flying, because that is what causes issues. But what is cool is now on DJI, it'll auto change the channel away from that seamlessly while you're flying. You won't even notice it unless you were physically watching it, which is cool.
Great. So right here.
It's kind of on that same topic, is what your range is and how you kind of position yourself when the shot's designed to know that you're going to have the best range for the whole shot.
Yep. It's a good question. I'll start again. I emphasize the Scout to say I take a small drone on the Scouting with the same FPV gear and we'll fly it just to like, if something goes wrong, it's a tiny toy drone. I try and put obviously you have to be line of sight, right? With whatever you're doing. The key is, I've always found, is like being high up somewhere is really, really helpful. I don't want to stand on top of a skyscraper, but you don't want to be like super low to the ground and like shooting up here or there. So just trying to find a good vantage point, I guess you could say. And these drones, they don't fly very long. Most people don't realize FPV drones fly for anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes max. So if I was to go out in an open field right now, with just clear skies for as far as the eye can see, I could fly that drone in theory, if line of sight rules weren't a thing, 100 miles and not have a signal issue. However, the battery's going to die about 5 miles in. So on a film set, we're not flying that far. We're usually no more than, I try and be no more than about 100 yards at most away from where the drone is flying. I try and be relatively as close to it as I possibly can be, and will position myself accordingly, even if it means mid-shoot, like moving myself for a slightly different shot.
You have a lot of batteries on set, basically.
Yeah, we are a fire hazard, but thankfully we've worked. Like, we just had a whole Sony talk about drones out in LA, and now there's actual regulations that drone crews are required to have out there, mainly being specific lithium fire extinguishers, which I'm very glad they're enforcing now. Thankfully, there haven't been any major instances or whatnot, but definitely that's something to think about, because we do have to have a lot of batteries for that reason, because if we want to fly back to back to back, well, you can only fly for 2 minutes. So you need like 20 batteries just to fly for 40 minutes, right? So something to think about. Yeah.
You got another? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to move into something bigger, like cinelifters, coming from something smaller, like smaller loops, 3.5-inch, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I would say that all drones are controlled by the same controller, essentially. So obviously building one, like I would say don't go straight to like a 10-inch or a 12S. By the way, some of these numbers for you non-drone pilots, I'm sorry. I'd go on for an hour explaining them, but start with like a 7 or 8-inch on a 6S battery. I would recommend, like with the Komodo, you can literally 3D print or order a dummy Komodo with just lead or sand inside of this like shell. And whenever I'm testing new drones, I fly at least 25 batteries on a drone before I ever put a cinema camera on it. So if something goes wrong, or if I lack talent, it's going to happen without a lot of money in the air. Because these drones themselves, like to build something to carry a cinema camera, you can build something really good for like $1,000. Whereas a DJI Inspire 3 is $3,200 $32,000 fully kitted out. So the camera is generally the most expensive thing you fly. So what I'd recommend is if you can fly a 3.5-inch, you have the ability to fly. The biggest difference is the cornering on a bigger drone is going to be a lot slower than your small 3-inch drone that will just turn on a dime. So just practice, go out to a park or whatnot and fly around trees and just get a feeling and understanding of that before you obviously put a cinema camera on.
I find that really interesting, that you can build a drone basically for $1,000. It's really great, and then you're just putting a camera on it as opposed to $32,000 for DJI's top of the line kind of thing. So that definitely sounds the way to go if you have the capability to do it. And I suppose you can learn how to. YouTube exists for a reason, right?
That's
To
right.
teach you how to build a drone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I'll say that Inspire 3 has things that like you're not easily going to be able to build on an FPV drone, return to home, GPS, all that. But yeah, definitely everything has their tool, and I try and build as much stuff as possible because I do want to save money, and you can often build something even better for less if you just watch YouTube enough.
I think that's a great piece of advice.
Real quick, you're under the hood, so and I've watched you fly, so it's hard to keep that in visual line of sight. How many visual observers are you using on a production like that? Because obviously somebody, in order to be in the rule or in line with the rules, somebody has to physically have their eyes on that drone.
Yeah, if there's a shot where I'm flying under a bridge or diving into Lower Grand, there's got to be like at least 3 or 4 spotters usually, and we're all in headset, so I can hear them talking to me, and their job is to spot and to point out obstacles and things that I need to avoid. So yeah, usually 3 to 4 people. But most of the time I'd say I only need 1 or 2. But if I'm doing something that is like stretching it out, then I need 3 or 4.
Are they linked up into your witness cams? Can they see what you're seeing?
They can. Generally don't have to be because they just need to watch the drone with their own eyes. Yeah.
Great. Way in the back.
Hey, so you mentioned you build custom drones. Do you have any powertrain preferences, like custom rates, thrust to weight ratios, more obscure things like 3D ESCs?
Okay, yeah.
We got some real technical questions now.
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, definitely. I have everyone has their preferences. I try and go for things that have the most redundancy that aren't going to fail me because most of the time all the components that you buy they're going to fly fairly similar to each other. I have my own brand, shameless plug. It's called Vanny Style. Now it's more for like smaller drones, which I'd like to eventually sell bigger drones as well. But yeah, I mean ultimately it's a lot of trial and error. The best way to know what to get, honestly, just like look at what the top pilots are using. Most of them are sponsored, so they're going to talk about what gear they use, and oftentimes if they're using it and it works, it's probably going to work for you too.
Great.
I'm gonna stay with the technical. And are you flying beta flight, or are you
You and about 20 people maybe in this room. Tony's just like he's not even understand this. This is like an Apple versus Windows debate, right? Beta flight would be Windows. KISS would be like Apple. It depends on the platform. For my personal fun flying freestyle drones or the GoPro stuff we've been doing here in Dallas, I like to fly KISS. The only reason I wouldn't use that on like a Cinelifter is because now a lot of my Cinelifters have a lot of custom programming and extensive tuning through the PID controllers. That KISS is like Apple, where it's great for just like easy getting something to work really well. But when you try and go that next step or have a different drone with like different cameras and whatnot, that's where it really is limited. So to answer your question, because this is like the Apple Windows debate of the drone world, yeah, I use both. But on all my Cinelifter drones, they're on beta flight at the moment. But I'm also experimenting with iNav because it has the return to home features and whatnot that the DJI Inspire 3 has. I would love to be able to have that because if I'm in a downtown situation, I lose signal. On iNav, I could flip it to return to home. It's not going to go into a building. It's just going to literally come and land itself. That would be something that would put my mind at ease, and I'm working on it. It's very hard to get that to work at the moment, but it's happening.
All right, great.
Technical.
Another one way in the back.
Have you considered Autopilot?
Autopilot just doesn't have the. I've used Autopilot for other applications in the past. It doesn't have the ability to really make a drone fly well for what I'm doing. So.
And then right here.
Do you have any tips like with animals? Are you working around animals? Do they tend to freak out?
Do you want the practical ones or the funny ones? On Emancipation, we were flying around horses.
Oh.
And it took...
Everybody goes, oh.
It took 3 weeks of just getting... We would fly the drone 200 yards away from them, and then 150, and then 100, and then 50, and then they get scared, and you got to go back. It took... Within 3 weeks of every single day, 5 days a week, it took them to get accustomed to the sound of it flying. Because it's scary. I mean, imagine an animal. So... yeah, if you're gonna fly around animals, sometimes they just don't care. 90% of the time that's not the case. So it takes time. I've like had cats swat tiny drones out of the air before, and whatnot. Like they don't care. They're not afraid of it. They just think of it as like a toy. But yeah, for like the commercial application, like flying around animals and livestock and stuff, yeah, definitely you have to prepare for them to be accustomed to that if they've already not experienced flying around a drone. Some of these, like, there's this like really cool like half wolf dog thing that I just that's probably like not exactly what it's called.
Is it a real animal you're talking about?
It's a real animal,
Okay.
Tony. It's a real animal. And I did it on this commercial with this director. His name is Colin. And we were literally chasing this like wolf dog thing, and it did not care. It just saw its trainer with its like treat at the very end, and the drone was like 5 feet behind it, and it did not care whatsoever. So it just depends. Like some of the trained animals that you might see in the film world, I think those you're gonna have a higher chance of success.
Are they getting quieter drones?
Yeah, I would say yes, but I feel like sometimes it feels like it's 1 step forward, 3 steps back, because as I'm building different platforms, like my focus is not on making them quiet, it's making them efficient and safe.
Yeah, the heavier the weight, it doesn't necessarily make it quieter. Yeah.
But sometimes it just depends like on the propeller that you're using. Like a small drone that I would fly in here with guards, those guards, they're loud. So they make the drone really whiny. So I do indoor fly-throughs and whatnot. I have to like warn people like it's going to be loud. It's fine. It's working. Sometimes bigger drones are loud, but sometimes bigger drones are actually really quiet and you can't even tell that it's up there. Like the DJI Inspire 3 is obviously it's a big company. They've made it fairly quiet where you can't even really hear it, which is pretty awesome. I think as the propeller technology develops and it's really developing fast, that's going to get better. But yeah, it's a good question. I think there's still overall FPV drones are a little bit more noisy. And that's just something people have to be aware of.
Well, they're a lot faster, so you've got to have higher speeds for everything with it, the propellers.
If you want to see something cool, of course, Jace here, I'll shout out. If you guys, seriously, go to look up Dallas Drone Racing on Facebook, because go to one of these events there in Carrollton at their home field. Watch these small drones fly through the air at 100 miles an hour. Sorry, 99.9 miles an hour. It'll blow your mind to see what these things can do. And in that sense, it's a cool noise because they're changing direction so fast. That's really where the noise comes from, right? Not going in a straight and level line, but it's when it's changing direction that the noise, the propeller, I think it's awesome, of course. But yeah, go witness one of these. It's just going to blow your mind what these drones can do.
All right, we'll do just a couple more questions because we've been around almost an hour and a half talking about drone stuff. So like 2 more questions. What we got?
I saw recently something about regarding the noise. Zipline is a company that's, I don't know if you saw, but they designed a different propeller that was extremely quiet. Not fast, obviously, not as fast as what you deal with, but yeah, the technology was in the propeller, the design of the propeller.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've never actually been requested to like make sure my drone was quiet, thankfully, but yeah, it all does come down to the design of the propeller ultimately on the drone. Doesn't matter how big or small it is. But like you said, the downside to making a propeller quiet is that it's going to lack, everything is give and take. So there's currently, and if someone here knows it, please tell me, but there's not really a propeller for a cinema lifter, which is like a cinema drone that is quiet, but also can perform the way. And also with the smaller drones, like what I want, and depending on the application, is if it's a small drone that I'm like freestyling around, I could care less even how that prop flies. I want it to be durable, right? I want to make sure it's redundant. So it all depends. And I think it's eventually these propeller manufacturers are going to figure out a way to do it all as pilots like myself and other people continue to test and push the limits.
All right, last question. Somebody make it a good one.
There's one down here.
All right, it better be good.
Who are some of your drone pilots that you follow that you find inspirational?
Ooh, good question. There's a lot actually. I think 3 years ago I would have said one just because
because he was a cocky young kid.
Yeah, well, not much has changed probably, but there's a couple names that come to my mind. There's Johnny FPV is arguably, I would say, the pioneer in this industry because he was the first one. He was like the GoPro pilot for back in 2019, like a year before I professionally did it. Johnny FPV is a good one. Who are some other ones that come to mind? There's a pilot. His name is Benoit FPV. He's a French pilot, so he's like the European like best FPV drone pilot. And he's done he just did a shot recently where it was a Gatorade commercial. He like chased a diver like diving into the swimming pool, and basically like sacrificed the drone for the shot. Like I like waterproofed it, but like it's still kind of a sacrifice. And it was just like those two are probably the top two that come to my mind. There's a lot of up and coming pilots as well that I think are going to break onto the scene here really soon that I'm excited to watch as well. The final one I'll shout out that you guys, it probably will hurt your mind to watch it a little bit. He's not a cinema pilot, but he's probably the best pilot in the world. His name's Min Chan Kim. I know some people in here know that name. And if I would deny it if he ever saw me say it, but he is definitely the most talented pilot in the world. If the kid won the Korean helicopter championship when he was like 7. And if you watch, if you watch him fly, it really hurts your brain. Like I beat him like maybe 1 out of 10 times. And then the last like 3 years, he just went to like from just being better than the rest, but like achievable to beat him to like just no one's going to beat him in drone racing unless he slips on a banana peel or something. Like he's so disciplined and dedicated. He's 18, 19 years old out of South Korea. MCKFPV, Min Chen Kim, definitely go watch him if you want your brain to hurt. I mean, you'll think that the video is sped up. It's not. It's real time, and it's worth watching. He's really cool. But again, I would totally deny all of this. I wouldn't say it's just.
All right, that was supposed to be the last question, but yours will be the last question.
Okay. So right now, drones are piloted by humans. Okay. Do you see like MoCo taking over drone control so that, let's say, if a visual effects specialist had built some background or some 3D world, that the drone in real life could be controlled by computer or by MoCo?
Yeah, it's happening. I would say to generalize that question, AI on drones is happening. I went over to Switzerland 2 years ago now and competed in an AI versus human drone race. And while the humans won, we won by like 1 second, which is not, it's a lot of time, but it's really not that much time when you're considering we were like the 3 best pilots at the time in the world. Definitely. I mean, AI is going to be a thing on drones. The benefit to my job security is that AI is not creative, at least as of right now.
It's pre-programmed.
And that was pre-programmed too,
Yeah.
might I add. So like, it had to learn they actually have a vision-based drone, which like their goal with the racing is not because they want to just be like, we're like the fastest drones in the world. The goal is that they can send a drone with a vision-based system that's not pre-programmed into like a burning building where you don't want to maybe risk a firefighter, but you can send a drone in to check and see if there's any people there, right? And so I think those are going to be like, the drone industry is huge. Like what we're talking about is just one part of it, but the practical use for drones, and that's where you're going to see the AI push more, because you're not going to have pilots hand flying these drones into buildings. It's going to be all AI based on the drones. You're going to need pilots who can test fly these drones most of the time. But yeah, there's definitely, there's drone delivery companies. There's one here in DFW called Wing. There's another one drone up as well, but there you can go over to Little Elm and Frisco and you can see drones at Walmart's delivering groceries to people. It's happening right now. It's free delivery on your phone. Like it's and those are all AI. There's just pilots in an office in Capella or wherever. They're just monitoring the systems and making sure if there's any air traffic or weather that they kind of take over. So it's happening for sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I have an idea/question.
Okay.
And you made me think of it when you talked about the guy diving into the pool and sacrificing the drone.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this has happened already, but if it hasn't, it might be something for you to try. Is obviously you can't do an underwater shot because drone can't fly underwater. But in a situation like that with that pool, what if you had a large plastic clear tube that was sticking out of the water, weighted at the bottom, so if somebody dove into the water, you could actually take the drone down the tube underwater to a certain depth, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know. My brain starts thinking the random creative shots like that.
Everyone's
Like,
yours good.
how would that work?
I mean, it sounds complicated, but I think one thing that even this that
complicated means fun, though, right?
Yeah, I think for sure. What I would say actually would be cool, and I think I'm not going to claim originality of this unless someone shows me no videos of it. But what I've thought about doing for a while, for like, I want to like fly down a creek. Like, why do I want to fly down a creek? Because I want to take a camera and like hang it on a rod or something that's like 6 foot and just fly the drone above the water. But then the camera is and then take off.
Right.
And you're like, I think that'd be cool to do. Maybe I'm already working on it, but
no, that's a great idea. Because the GoPro can go under the water and
Yeah.
the drone doesn't have to, and then it pops out. And
yeah,
that's a cool idea.
Kyle and I will probably work on that this week.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a fun one.
So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen any of the water type stuff yet. So, all right. Anyways, thank you very much for coming out tonight. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.